One of the new conspiracy theories that developed over the past couple of weeks, maybe month, was this idea that Tulsi Gabbard was running to split the progressive vote from Bernie after getting the okays from the DNC so that they could deny him the nomination in a more effective manner. And there is a rule that was signed, or rather, that was passed last summer, where basically it's a thought crime to not be lock in step with the DNC's official platform, which effectively would render his ability to be a candidate mute or otherwise not a possibility. And I actually have a video I wanted to show or send that I think elaborates on it a little bit further. Um, there's also a new rule where if you don't get a majority of the vote, I believe 50% or over, then it goes to the second ballot. So even if he were to win every state, if it's only by 1, 2%, then they're going to go, oh, well, you can't, it doesn't matter. Ha ha ha. So, more screwing and little stupid things are going on and being put into place. But when I was sitting back and thinking about what true problem of this stuff is and why it is even allowed to go on, I realized that a lot of people have still subscribed to this belief system that the two parties are different, that they are not alike. And it's been brought on a lot, but it's been a byproduct of the Trump derangement syndrome that people have, where you've actually had these individuals who just they really believe in their minds that this is not some pyramid scheme of two parties going back and forth and proceeding to, actually care about voters. And I always try to explain this when you have the most popular politician and your party adopts rules that are purposely designed to screw that person over, you've got to ask yourself, is it because they don't agree with this person politically, or is it because they have some personal distaste for the individual? None of these DNC rules, these DNC officials have a personal issue with Sanders. They just don't want their donor money to run out if any of the things that he pushes for are implemented. And I was actually sitting here a while back and I tried to explain, you can look at someone like Booker or Harris, who I have a bigger piece coming out maybe next week, depending on if I get the time to do it. But you can look at people like that who, they now say they're for single payer. And you can watch the kind of lack of establishment fighting or anger. And you can reasonably conclude, hey, they're probably not that big of a deal in the eyes of the actual people who should be scared and worried if they're going to bring about genuine change. For as much hatred as people have of them now, one of the highlights of Trump's campaign was that there was this big Republican, establishment backlash because they were convinced he was going to govern in a way that was not typical for their liking, getting out of the wars. Um, at one point, espousing a favorable view of single payer. I think he also mentioned not wanting to mess with Social Security, but I could be wrong with that at that. So bottom line is they saw this person who they had never been in office, so they didn't know if he would live up to his campaign promises or not. And they became terrified. So they started putting people up like Jeb Bush and Rubio, and it kept failing over and over again because for as bad as they are, their primary is something that is actually winnable by the people who enter it. There are no stupid super delegates who can decide, we're going to pick the person who has less votes over the person that does. They tried to do something really finicky with at the RNC, where they hoped that Cruz would win Indiana and then be able to have a brokered convention like they did in '76, but it failed as well. So the bottom line is that what was happening to Trump was very similar to what happened with Sanders, except it was done more effectively by the corrupt cronies that were in place at the time. And they're doing it in an even more roundabout way this time, where you have the thought police. You also have this disqualification as it relates to if someone isn't a Democrat. And I look at the voters. I go on social media a lot. I try to gauge what people are thinking or otherwise feeling. The people that don't try to make content or just sort of casually enjoy this stuff, if you can even call it that. And there was a person who stated that they were, they put up their list of different candidates that they like, and they say, they're part of the Never Bernie column or the Never Sanders group. And I always try to explain. I look at the thing happening to him and the people who are okay with it because it's happening to him as the same thing with Alex Jones, where it's a person who I am not a fan of whatsoever in Alex Jones' case. But I find it absolutely criminal that YouTube can just deplatform you along with Twitter and these other websites. There's this OPEC dark system that says, screw you, get out of here, because we choose and pick you to pull off and completely have disappear. That's a broken system that people purposefully allow to just go materialize because it hasn't happened to anyone that they actually care about yet. But I guarantee you, if they did it to someone like PewDiePie or who else, some random singer, that has billions of views and millions of subscribers, people would lose their minds. They would go, "Oh my God, this can't be happening." But you get how it's that same selective frustration over something that's horrible, no matter who it's done to. Um, the whole purpose of having a primary is so you can pick people, or rather the voters can pick an individual that they think is best qualified for the position. So when you have the voters say, let's say in my state, California, 45% want Sanders and 44% want, I don't know, let's say Harris, but then they both get the same amount of delegates. What is that? See, in the Republican primary, even though they had a couple of proportional delegates, they also had the winner takes all. So I remember Texas was one of those. Actually, screw that. There might have been something else. But my point is, they still did in the manner where there was less trickery involved. And it gets to be a headache when you try to explain to people that regardless of what you feel about a particular candidate, you have to question the DNC and its motives when the people involved are disingenuous. And I oftentimes say I refuse to, if I had to pick, have my choice, I would rather have the MSNBC taken off the air than CNN, than Fox, because Fox is less capable of hiding its establishment agenda because they go for the Republicans. A lot of people dislike them. When you cloak yourself in the mask of supporting a group or some people, you're able to get away with a lot more disastrous and sinister motives. So, for example, when Hillary ran, last time, 2016, she was someone who came out as being in favor of gay marriage, this whole pro-LGBT spiel, but had been an ardent supporter of the Defense of Marriage Act, which was banning same-sex couples from getting married just 20 years prior. And it was the same thing with Obama. And, I'm doing this purposefully because I've grown so sick and tired of these Trump supporters claiming that because you mention how you don't like something he does or something that is related to him, you're some secret closet Democrat. I don't like either party for these explicit reasons. They go out of their way to screw over the people in favor of advancing their own agenda. Why do you think Pelosi gets, she becomes speaker, right? This is after the Senate, which is controlled by Republicans, passes a bipartisan bill to get out of Yemen, to stop U.S. involvement over there. And the Republicans during that same time in the House, when it's still under the control of Speaker Ryan, formerly anyway, he says, hey, we're going to not talk about this for the rest of the year. So she gets in office and you think, oh, great, the first thing they're going to do is pass that Yemen bill. That's one less war we have to worry about. And nothing, doesn't come up for a vote, doesn't get discussed. Not at all, just completely ignored. She couldn't even remember what the Green New Deal was, calling it the Green. But that's how out of their minds these people are, and how they're able to get away with things that regular people, if they were in these positions, where they weren't backed by large donors and corporations that basically kiss their behinds because they happen to be, some lackey that will do their bidding, wouldn't be able to get away with. And I watch these commentators, right? The ones that will go and say, I'm part of, Team Pelosi, or I'm part of the Democrats. Like, what are you talking about? These are the same people who go down the list. Any position the Republicans have had, the Democrats have as well. But again, because they cloak themselves in being in favor of, LGBT rights, they're able to look as if they're more accepting. Let's not kid ourselves. These are the same people who, if they had it their own way, School would remain costly as it already is. Student loan debt would remain over $1 trillion as it already is. Um, 30 million people would still not have health insurance as it already is. So, there's this weird penchant they have to just completely push all this away in favor of having their little Trump boner. I kept trying to explain a lot of times when you talk about this stuff and you don't really see the audience for it. I get where people find this stuff boring. They don't think it's interesting. They don't, they don't look for this kind of stuff. But what else can I do with a public that it seems whenever I try to bring something to the table as far as speak about it, they just aren't interested. Um, for example, if I were to go and mention Harris's record, I would have people who would tell me, hey, that was however many years ago. And, I've even had someone who tried to defend her for being against legalizing marijuana just a few months back, and then only switching over to it when it became politically expedient or convenient for her presidential campaign. But again, these are the kinds of people that I can't see myself trying to work with because there's nothing to work with. They've already made up their minds that, well, this one side sucks, but at least it's not Trump. Or they've blindly convinced themselves, hey, it's cool to keep, backing whoever the terrible person is because they're not as bad as the other guy. That's why they'll go along with the DNC's buffoonery of trying to screw up the most popular politician from getting its nomination instead of just having a regular primary. If they were so not scared, if Sanders was such a non-threat, why the hell would they add new rules to limit what he can say and what he can affiliate himself as? I mean, theoretically, shouldn't they be treating him the same way they did at the start of the last primary, where oh, he can run, yeah, sure, whatever, he won't get anywhere. He's got pie in the sky ideas, ha. Again, if he was such a non-big deal, why are they doing all this extra stuff? But again, the critical thinking skills are not. See, a lot of bashers of Trump supporters will oftentimes talk about their level of intelligence. And I look at these people who will say this stuff, and then you go over their page, and what is there? You have them blindly worshiping anyone and everything that opposes Trump. So, for example, the FBI, if anyone remembers what they did to MLK, where he gets wiretapped for the last 5 years of his life, and even has the director tell him to kill himself in the letter. That same organization that terrorized members of the civil rights movement just 50 short years ago is now being lionized because its former director Mueller is heading an investigation. An investigation that's trying to prove if Trump was involved in something that, according to his detractors, he was too stupid to even know about to begin with. Really, think about how these dueling narratives. Liberals will say Trump is dumb, Trump is not smart, but at the same time, they're telling you that he was smart enough to collude with the Russians. Again, you can't have it both ways. He can't be an idiot and then be someone who was part of this grand ball conspiracy to sabotage the election and to make sure that he won he could win without getting the majority of the votes. Ha 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 ha. It doesn't make sense, but that's how out of their minds these people are. So you can even look at it with when he pulled out of Syria. I said we need to get out of these wars, these conflicts, and then I have Democrats trying to crap on me on Twitter for not suddenly being a hawk because the president that they want me to hate did something I liked. And, Bernie ends up having to not be able to say anything because his own supposed party that he's been caucusing with for years censored him. So you look at what's happening with Tulsi Gabbard, for example, where she's going on these stations and talking about the neocons and wars. All that's exactly correct. But these networks are aware of that, and they're going to keep smearing her and going out of their way to make sure that, she appears to be part of some Assad regime when most Americans don't even know anything about Assad, other than the fact that, Trump, sent a bomb over there last year and the year before that. So, it's kind of like when you have a lot of Republicans who scream out socialism and then I guess they expect regular people to know what that word means. It's all really ridiculous.